The cold metal floor of the abandoned space station made no sound as Ambassador Kethver walked through its empty halls. His blue skin looked pale in the dim emergency lighting that still flickered after all these years. 50 years had passed since the humans left, but their presence still felt heavy in this place. Kethver stopped in front of a large window that looked out into space. Earth hung below like a blue marble, beautiful and silent. No ships moved around it anymore. No radio. Signals came from its surface. The humans were gone, and they had taken their noise and chaos with them. "Why did you leave us?" he whispered to the empty room. Behind him, his assistant Velka made soft clicking sounds with her claws on her datapad. She was young and had never seen a human in person. To her, they were just stories from the old times. "Ambassador, the records show that Captain Jake Morrison was the last human commander here," she said. His final message was sent exactly 50 years ago today. Kethver nodded slowly. He remembered Jake Morrison well. The human had been tall and strong, with kind eyes and a quick smile. He had a way of making even the most difficult problems seem simple. All humans had that gift. "Play the message again," Kethver said. The room filled with the sound of Jake Morrison's voice. Even after 50 years, hearing it made Kethver's hearts beat faster. The humans had that effect on everyone they met. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Station. Today marks the beginning of humanity's departure from this galaxy. We know this decision will be hard for our friends to understand. We have lived among you for over 200 years. We have shared your joys, your sorrows. We have helped you solve your problems and build your futures." The message paused, and Kethvar could hear Jake take a deep breath. "But there is something calling us from beyond the stars, something we must answer. We have learned things about the universe that we cannot ignore. We must seek answers in the void between galaxies. We must go where no one has gone before." Kethver closed his eyes. He had heard these words many times, but they still made no sense to him. What could be more important than the galaxy they had all built together? "We leave behind our friends, our homes, and our past, but we do not leave behind our love for you. Remember us not as those who abandoned you, but as those who go ahead to make the path safe for all who follow." The message ended, and silence filled the room again. Kethver opened his eyes and looked out at the empty space around Earth. In the old days, this area would have been full of ships from every corner of the galaxy. Humans had a way of bringing everyone together. "Sir," Velka said quietly, "the other records show that things were not always perfect before the humans left." Kethver turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" She pulled up more files on her pad. Lieutenant Amy Carter kept detailed notes about growing tensions between different species. The Draconians were getting angry about trade agreements. The Crystalline Collective was upset about mining rights. The Centauri Federation was threatening to leave the Galactic Council. But those problems were solved, Kethver said. "Yes, but only because the humans stepped in every time. They talked to everyone. They found solutions that made everyone happy. They were always there when we needed them." Kethver felt a cold fear growing in his stomach. "And now they are not here." Velka nodded. "The problems are starting again. The Draconians are expanding into neutral space. The Crystalline Collective has stopped talking to the other species. Trade routes are being attacked by pirates." Kethver walked to another window. This one showed the shipyards where human vessels used to be built. Now the yards were empty and dark. Weeds had grown through the metal walkways. Small animals from Earth had made nests in the abandoned buildings. "I was there when the humans first came to our galaxy," he said. "I was young then, younger than you are now. My people were fighting a war with the Vegan Empire. We had been killing each other for 50 years. Then the humans arrived." He paused, remembering those days. They did not take sides. They did not judge us. They just talked to both sides and helped us see that we were fighting over things that did not matter. Within a year, we had peace. Within 5 years, we were trading partners. Within 10 years, we were friends. What made them so special? Velka asked. Cuthbert thought about this question. He had asked it many times over the years. They were different from us. Most species in the galaxy think in similar ways. We have order. We have rules. We have systems that make sense. But humans were chaos. They were unpredictable. They would find solutions that none of us could imagine. He pointed to a picture on the wall. It showed a group of humans and aliens working together on some kind of machine. They also cared about things that seemed strange to us. They would risk their lives to save a single person. They would spend years solving a problem that affected only a few people. They saw value in things that we thought were worthless. But they were also warriors, Velka said. The records show they fought in many battles. Yes, but they hated fighting. They only fought when there was no other choice. And even then, they tried to find ways to end conflicts quickly and with as little death as possible. Kethvar walked back to the communications console. He pressed a button and spoke into the microphone. This is Ambassador Kethvar, calling any human ships in the area. Please respond. We need to talk. He waited, but only silence came back. He tried again with the same result. They are really gone, Velka said softly. Yes, Kethvar replied. And I fear we are about to learn just how much we needed them. Outside the window, Earth continued its slow rotation, beautiful and empty. Somewhere in the distance, in the dark spaces between galaxies, humanity was searching for answers to questions that the rest of the galaxy did not even know how to ask. The age of human protection was over. The age of facing the unknown alone had begun. 20 years had passed since humanity vanished from the galaxy. The problems that Ambassador Kethvar had feared were now growing larger every day. What started as small disagreements between species had become serious conflicts that threatened the peace of entire star systems. Admiral Vexthal of the Draconian Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as his fleet moved toward the neutral planet of Kepler-7. His red scales gleamed under the ship's lights, and his yellow eyes burned with ambition. The Draconians had always been a warrior race, but for 2 centuries, the humans had kept them focused on peaceful activities. Admiral, his second-in-command, said, "We are receiving protests from the Galactic Council. They say we have no right to claim this planet." Vexthal laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "The Galactic Council has no power without the humans to back them up. They are just words now, empty words from weak species who cannot protect themselves." He turned to face his crew. "For too long, we have listened to human speeches about peace and cooperation. They told us that strength should be used to protect, not to conquer. They made us soft and weak, but now they are gone, and we can return to our true nature." The Draconian ships moved closer to Kepler-7. The planet was rich in rare minerals that many species needed for their technology. Under the old human treaties, no single species could claim such worlds. They belonged to everyone and were managed by the Galactic Council. "Sir," the communications officer said, "the planet's defenders are calling for help. They say they will fight us." "Let them try," Vexthal said. "Their weapons are toys compared to ours." The humans always insisted on keeping military technology balanced between species. They said it prevented wars. Now we will show them what real power looks like. Far across the galaxy, on the crystal world of Zephyria, President Crystal of the Crystalline Collective was making her own difficult decisions. Her body was made of living crystal that changed colors with her emotions. Right now, she glowed angry red. "We cannot continue like this," she told her council. The Draconians take whatever they want. The Centauri Federation ignores our trade agreements. The vegan empire has stopped sharing their medical research. Everyone is thinking only of themselves. One of her advisors, a younger crystal being, named Shardake, stepped forward. President, perhaps we should also look after our own interests first. The humans always said we were too generous with our technology. Crystal's color shifted to sad blue. The humans never said that. They encouraged use to share our gifts with others. They said that when everyone benefits, everyone is stronger. But where are the humans now? Shardake asked. They left us to face these problems alone. Maybe they were wrong about cooperation. Crystal looked out at the stars through her crystal palace's transparent walls. I have decided to withdraw. The Crystalline Collective from the Galactic Council. We will no longer share our technology with species that only take and never give back. The decision sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The Crystalline Collective had provided advanced technology to dozens of species. Their crystal computers made interstellar communication possible. Their energy crystals powered most of the galaxies. Space stations. Without their cooperation, many worlds would struggle to maintain their current way of life. Meanwhile, on the abandoned human research station in the Outer Rim, Dr. Lisa Brooks's old laboratory was falling apart. The automated systems that had been designed to run for decades were breaking down without proper maintenance. Only humans had understood how to repair the complex machines that kept the station running. Robot maintenance units moved through the empty halls, but they could only do simple tasks. The more complex problems were beyond their programming. Water leaked from broken pipes. Air recyclers worked at half capacity. The food gardens that had fed hundreds of researchers were dying. The station had been studying the effects of different species living together on shared worlds. Dr. Brooks had spent 30 years learning how to help different alien biologies coexist. Her research had prevented countless ecological disasters on colony worlds throughout the galaxy. Now, with the systems failing, the delicate balance she had maintained was collapsing. On the colony world of New Harmony, plants that humans had carefully selected were dying. The soil chemistry was changing in ways that hurt the alien crops. Animals from different worlds were fighting instead of living together peacefully. The colonists sent desperate messages asking for help. But no one knew how to fix the problems. The humans had made it look easy, but their knowledge had been built over generations of careful study and experimentation. Captain Ben Parker's old alliance treaties were gathering dust in government archives across the galaxy. These documents had guaranteed that species would help each other in times of need. They had created a network of mutual support that had kept the peace for 2 centuries. But now, when the Kepler-7 crisis began, no one came to help the planets. Defenders. The treaties required military assistance, but every species had excuses. The Centauri Federation said they were too far away. The vegan empire claimed they were dealing with their own problems. The smaller species simply ignored the calls for help. The Draconian fleet reached Kepler-7 and began their attack. The planet's small defense force fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Within hours, the battle was over. The Draconians had won their first conquest in over 200 years. The victory sent a message to every species in the galaxy. The old rules were gone. The protection that humans had provided was no longer there. It was now a time when the strong took what they wanted, and the weak suffered. Other warrior species began to take notice. If the Draconians could ignore the Galactic Council and take whatever they wanted, why should anyone else follow the old agreements? The carefully built civilization that humans had helped create was beginning to crumble. In the halls of the Galactic Council, Ambassador Kethver sat in emergency session with representatives from dozens of species. The mood was dark and fearful. "We must do something," he said to the assembled delegates. "If we cannot work together, our civilization will collapse into chaos." But even as he spoke, he knew that his words carried no real power. Without the humans to guide them and protect them, the galaxy's species were learning a harsh truth. Peace was much harder to maintain than war was to start. The first reports came from the Outer Rim territories. A strange sickness was spreading from world to world, affecting every species it touched. Dr. Zarabeth of the Centauri Medical Institute stared at her data screens in horror. Nothing in her 40 years of medical practice had prepared her for what she was seeing. The disease attacks the genetic modifications that each species has developed over the centuries, she told her research team. It is like something designed specifically to undo everything we have become. Her assistant, a young Centauri named Velron, looked confused. But that is impossible. How could a natural disease know about our genetic changes? Dr. Zarabeth shook her head. I do not think this is natural. The pattern is too perfect, too focused. Someone or something created this plague. The sickness had started on the mining world of Asteroid Base 7. The workers there had been the first to fall. Ill. Within days, the entire population was dead. The disease moved faster than any natural plague, jumping from world to world with frightening speed. What made it worse was that the disease seemed to affect each species differently. The Draconians found their fire-breathing abilities failing. The Crystalline Collective watched their crystal bodies crack and shatter. The Centauri lost their ability to survive in low-gravity environments. Each species was losing the very things that made them special. On the medical research station in the Vega system, Dr. Kate Sullivan's old laboratory held secrets that no one understood. The automated systems were still running, but the alien doctors who came to study them could not make sense of the human research methods. Look at this, said Dr. Mordek, a vegan scientist with tentacles instead of arms. The humans were working on something called immunity protocols. They have files on every species in the galaxy, including genetic weaknesses we never knew we had. His colleague, Dr. Silvar from the Zephyrian Council, examined the data. These files show that the humans were developing treatments for diseases that did not exist yet. How did they know to prepare for threats that had never appeared? The answer lay deeper in the computer systems, in files that were locked behind security codes that only humans had known. The alien doctors could see that. The information was there, but they could not access it. The humans had been very careful about protecting their most important secrets. As the plague spread, panic began to grip the galaxy. Worlds that had been fighting each other just months before now found themselves facing the same terrible enemy. The Draconian Empire's conquest of new territories meant nothing when their soldiers were dying from the mysterious disease. Admiral Vexthal stood in his ship's medical bay, watching his crew suffer. His own scales were beginning to lose their red color, turning gray and brittle. The disease was taking away their strength, their fire, everything that made them draconian. Sir, his medical officer said weakly, we have found something in the old human records. There are references to this plague in files from 50 years ago. Vexthal felt a chill run through his diseased body. What do you mean? The humans knew about this plague. They had been studying it. There are notes from a human doctor named Rick Davis. He says the plague is not from our galaxy. The Admiral's yellow eyes widened. Not from our galaxy? The files are mostly encrypted, but what we can read suggests that this disease comes from the dark space between galaxies. The humans called it a weapon designed by something they called the Void Collective. Across the galaxy, similar discoveries were being made. On every world with old human research facilities, alien scientists were finding hints of a terrible truth. The humans had not just been peacekeepers and mediators. They had been protecting the galaxy from threats that no one else had known existed. President Crystal of the Crystalline Collective stood in her palace, her crystal body now cracked and dim. The plague was destroying her people faster than any. Others, their crystal nature, which had made them so unique, was also making them more vulnerable to the disease. "We must contact the other species," she told her advisors, her voice weak and fading. "We cannot fight this alone." But it was too late for the proud isolation she had chosen. The plague had spread too far, too fast. The crystalline collectives' withdrawal from galactic cooperation had left them without the resources they needed to fight back. Meanwhile, on the abandoned human colony world of New Terra, automated systems were starting to activate. Deep underground, in bunkers that had been sealed for 50 years, ancient machines began to wake up. These were the emergency systems that the humans had left behind, programmed to activate only when the galaxy faced its greatest danger. Machines began broadcasting a signal across all frequencies. It was a message from Commander Rick Davis, recorded just before humanity's departure. His voice was calm and steady, but his words were terrifying. "If you are hearing this message, then the plague has begun. We hoped it would never be necessary to activate these systems, but the Void Collective has found our galaxy. The disease you are facing is not natural. It is a weapon designed to weaken and destroy all intelligent life." The message paused and then continued. "We have been fighting this enemy for over 300 years. It comes from the dark space between galaxies, a force that consumes everything it touches. We call it the Void Collective because it absorbs the knowledge and abilities of every species it destroys." Emergency meetings were called on every world that could still communicate. The revelation that humans had been secretly protecting them from an extragalactic threat changed everything. The petty wars and territorial disputes that had seemed so important just months before now looked like foolish distractions. Dr. Zarabeth managed to attend one of these meetings despite her illness. The human files we can access show that they were developing resistance to this plague. They were giving us treatments disguised as routine medical care. They were preparing us for this war without us even knowing it. But now, without the humans to guide them, the galaxy's species were facing their greatest enemy with no protection and no plan. The plague continued to spread, and worse. Long-range sensors were detecting something else approaching from the dark space beyond the galaxy's edge. Ships. Massive ships, unlike anything anyone had ever seen. The Void Collective was not content to simply send their plague ahead of them. They were coming in person to finish what the disease had started. The galaxy that had once been protected by human vigilance was now completely vulnerable. The enemy that humanity had fought in secret for centuries was about to reveal itself, and there was no one left to stand in their way. In the depths of space, the ancient evil that had driven humanity away was finally ready to claim the galaxy for itself. The ancient beacons hidden throughout the galaxy began to activate one by one. These devices had been placed by humans decades ago, disguised as simple communication relays. Now, as the plague weakened every species and strange ships approached from dark space, the beacons revealed their true purpose. Colonel Greg Murphy's face appeared on screens across 1,000 worlds. He had been dead for 30 years, but his recorded message carried the weight of terrible knowledge. His eyes were tired, and his voice was heavy with the burden of secrets he had carried for too long. "My fellow beings of the galaxy," he began, "if you are seeing this message, then humanity has failed in our primary mission. The enemy we have fought in secret for over 3 centuries has finally made their move against you. On the disease-ravaged world of Centauri Prime, the few surviving, leaders gathered around their emergency communication center. President Calvin, his once blue skin now pale and sickly, listened with growing horror as the human colonel continued his revelation. "We were not your peacekeepers by choice. We were your guardians by necessity. The entity you now face is called The Void Collective. It comes from the dark space between galaxies, consuming entire civilizations and adding their knowledge to its own terrible intelligence. The message showed star charts that no living being had ever seen. They displayed the vast empty spaces between galaxies, marked with red zones that indicated the collective's territory. The red covered more space than anyone had imagined possible. The Void Collective does not simply destroy civilizations, Murphy continued. It absorbs them. Every species it conquers becomes part of its hive mind. Every technology it captures makes it stronger. It has been growing for millions of years, consuming galaxy after galaxy. Captain Alex Turner's classified files began opening automatically as the beacons activated. These files contained the true history of humanity's role in the galaxy. They showed battle reports from conflicts that had never been made public, research into weapons that no one knew existed, and casualty lists from a war that had been fought in complete secrecy. 300 years ago, the Void Collective first reached our galaxy. Turner's recorded voice explained. It began by sending infiltrators, beings that looked like members of existing species, but were actually controlled by the collective's hive mind. These infiltrators started wars, caused plagues, and slowly weakened the galaxy's defenses. The files showed images of battles fought in the dark regions between star systems. Human ships engaging strange, twisted vessels that seemed to be made of living darkness. The humans had been fighting and dying to protect species that never knew they were in danger. We discovered that humans have a unique resistance to the collective's influence, Turner continued. Our chaotic, individualistic nature makes it difficult for the hive mind to control us. This resistance made us the natural guardians of the galaxy. Dr. Nina Foster's research files revealed the most shocking truth of all. The humans had not just been protecting the galaxy from the outside. They had been secretly preparing every species for the war that was coming. Every medical treatment we gave you, every genetic therapy we provided, every seemingly helpful advancement we shared, Foster's voice explained, was designed to build your resistance to the Void Collective. We have been slowly, carefully making you stronger without you knowing it. The files showed decades of careful genetic modifications. The enhanced fire-breathing abilities of the Draconians were not natural evolution, but human engineering, designed to fight creatures that were vulnerable to extreme heat. The crystalline collective's improved crystal bodies were reinforced to resist the collective's mind control technology. Every species had been quietly prepared for a war they never knew was coming. But we made a mistake, Foster continued. We thought we could protect you while keeping you innocent. We believed that if we handled the threat alone, you would never have to face the horror of the Void Collective. We were wrong. The massive ships approaching from dark space were now visible to long-range sensors across the galaxy. They were larger than anything anyone had ever imagined, some of them the size of small moons. Their surfaces seemed to writhe and shift like living things, and they moved with a purpose that terrified every observer. The collective learned too. Adapt to our resistance, Murphy's message revealed. They developed new forms of the plague that could affect even us. We realized that we could not win the war with our current abilities. We needed to become something more. The revelation hit the galaxy like a physical blow. Humanity had not abandoned them. They had made the ultimate sacrifice, leaving everything they knew and loved to transform themselves into something that could fight an enemy from beyond the stars. We have gone into the dark space between galaxies, Murphy continued. We have entered the domain of the Void Collective itself. There, in the cold and empty darkness, we will learn to become what the galaxy needs us to be. The files showed the final human preparations. Ships loaded with volunteers who knew they might never return. Families saying goodbye forever. Children who would grow up in the darkness between stars, becoming something their parents could not imagine. If we succeed, we will return changed. We will no longer be the humans you knew. We will be something new, something designed specifically to fight the Void Collective. If we fail, then the galaxy will face its greatest enemy alone." Admiral Vexthal, despite his illness, managed to stand before his remaining crew. The proud, draconian warrior now understood that his people's strength had been a gift from the humans, designed to help them in the battle that was coming. "We have been fools," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We thought we were warriors, but we were only children playing with toys the humans gave us. Now the real war begins." As the massive Void Collective ships entered the galaxy's outer systems, the plague suddenly began to change. Instead of weakening the surviving populations, it started to activate the hidden genetic modifications the humans had implanted over the centuries. The sick began to feel stronger. The dying began to recover. The humans had planned for this moment. Even in their absence, they were still protecting the galaxy. The final phase of their preparation was beginning, and every species was about to discover what humanity had really made them capable of. But would it be enough? The enemy approaching from dark space had consumed entire galaxies. The battle for survival was about to begin, and nobody knew if the galaxy could survive without its guardians. The Void Collective's massive ships had reached the inner systems of the galaxy. Their dark forms blotted out the light of entire stars as they moved toward the core worlds. Behind them came smaller vessels, countless millions of them, like a swarm of deadly insects spreading across space. Admiral Zarkith of the Centauri Federation stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the approaching enemy fleet. Around him, the combined forces of every surviving species in the galaxy had gathered for what everyone knew would be the final battle. Draconian fireships flew alongside crystalline energy vessels. Zephyrian fighters moved in formation, with vegan medical ships converted to carry weapons. "All ships report ready for battle," his communications officer said, her voice shaking. With fear, Zarkith nodded grimly. Even with all their forces combined, they were vastly outnumbered. The enemy had ships that dwarfed their largest vessels. The Void Collective had consumed entire galaxies, and their technology was beyond anything the Defenders had ever seen. "Today we fight not just for our worlds," he broadcast to all ships, "but for the right to exist as free beings. The humans prepared us for this moment. We will not let their sacrifice be in vain." President Velandra of the Epsilon Alliance watched from her command ship as the first wave of enemy vessels approached. The strange ships moved in perfect coordination, like parts of a single giant organism. There was no chaos in their movements, no individual decisions being made. They were all controlled by the same terrible intelligence. "Enemy ships are opening fire," her tactical officer reported. The battle began with a fury that shook the fabric of space itself. The Void Collective's weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They fired beams of pure darkness that seemed to drain the energy from everything they touched. Ships caught in these beams simply faded away, their crews screaming as their life force was absorbed into the Collective's hive mind. But the galaxy's defenders were not defenseless. The genetic modifications that humans had given them over the centuries were now fully active. Draconian fire burned hotter than ever before, hot enough to damage ships that seemed immune to normal weapons. Crystalline energy weapons cut through the enemy's dark armor like knives through paper. The battle raged for hours. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Entire squadrons were destroyed in seconds. The space around the galaxy's core became a graveyard of twisted metal and fading energy. But the Void Collective seemed endless. For every ship the Defenders destroyed, 10 more took its place. The enemy was slowly but surely pushing toward the inhabited worlds where billions of beings waited in terror. "Sir," Zarkith, as sensor officer, called out, "I am detecting massive energy signatures approaching from the galactic rim. Something big is coming." All across the battlefield, long range, sensors began picking up the same readings. Huge sources of energy were moving toward the battle at incredible speed. But these signatures were different from the Void Collective ships. They felt familiar somehow, like an old friend returning home. Then the communication systems across the entire galaxy suddenly activated. Every ship, every station, every world received the same message at the same time. It was a voice that many remembered, but none had heard for 50 years. "This is Commander Steve Rogers of the Human Defense Force. We have returned." The word sent a shock wave through every surviving being in the galaxy. The humans had come back, but as their ships emerged from the darkness at the galaxy's edge, it became clear that they were no longer the same species that had left 50 years ago. The human ships were massive, larger than anything they had built before. Their surfaces seemed to shimmer and shift, as if they were made of living light. They moved with a grace and power that defied the laws of physics as the galaxy understood them. "All allied forces, this is Captain Matt Johnson." Another voice. "Broadcast? Pull back to defensive positions. We will handle the Void Collective." But Zarkith was not ready to retreat. "Human ships, you have been gone for 50 years. We have been fighting and dying while you were away. We will not run now." "Admiral," came the patient reply, "we understand your anger, but you do not understand what we have become. We have spent 50 years in the domain of the Void Collective. We have learned their weaknesses. We have become something they cannot consume." The human fleet moved into battle formation, and the galaxy's defenders saw immediately that something had changed. The humans moved with perfect coordination, but it was not the mindless unity of the Void Collective. Each ship seemed to anticipate what the others would do, as if they were all part of a single consciousness that still respected individual thought. "We are still human," Matt Johnson's voice continued, "but we are also something more. We have learned to link our minds while keeping our souls. We have become what we needed to become to protect you." The human ships engaged the Void Collective, and the battle changed instantly. The humans fought with weapons that seemed to be made of pure energy, beams of light that cut through the enemy's darkness like swords through shadow. Their movements were impossibly fast and precise, as if they could predict what the enemy would do before it happened. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell's voice came over the communications as the human fleet tore through the enemy formation. "We have seen what the Void Collective truly is. It is not just a conqueror. It is a wound in the universe itself, a tear in the fabric of reality that seeks to consume all life and light." The battle that followed was like nothing anyone had ever witnessed. The humans fought with a fury born of 50 years of preparation and suffering. They had gone into the darkest places in the universe and emerged as beings of pure purpose, dedicated to protecting the galaxy. They had never stopped. Loving, one by one, the massive Void Collective ships began to fall. The enemy's perfect coordination broke down as the humans disrupted their hive-mind connection. Ships that had seemed invincible were destroyed by weapons that attacked not just their physical form, but their very essence. "The collective is retreating," Zarkith reported in amazement. "They are actually running away." "Not retreating," Matt Johnson corrected. "We are driving them back to the dark space where they belong. This battle is won, but the war will continue. We will follow them into the darkness and make sure they never threaten another galaxy again." As the last of the Void Collective ships fled back toward the empty spaces between galaxies, the human fleet began to change course to follow them. But before they left, Steve Rogers sent one final message to the galaxy they had saved. "We are still your guardians. We will always be your guardians." But now you know the truth about the universe. You know that there are forces of darkness that seek to destroy everything good and beautiful. You must be strong. You must be united. And you must never forget that the light is worth fighting for. The human fleet disappeared into the dark space beyond the galaxy, chasing their ancient enemy back to the void where the final battle would be fought. The galaxy was safe, but it would never be the same. The age of innocence was over. The age of eternal vigilance had begun.